God is intervening on your behalf to put you back on the right path. God gave me the biggest revelation the other day about Jonah getting swallowed by a whale. The coolest thing ever is when God gives your life experiences meaning and relates it to the stories in the Bible for understanding of how God works and how God moves. When you start to read the Bible and understand the stories, God gives you wisdom and knowledge of who He is and how you can apply it to your life. Something that happened to me 3 years ago, God just now gave me fresh revelation of why that happened, all from studying a story in the Bible. And when I was writing all this down, God was dropping all this into my spirit. He's like, this revelation isn't just for you. This is going to be a word for somebody. This is going to be an eye-opening revelation for a lot of you guys watching this video. So if y'all don't know the story of Jonah, I'm sure we've all heard it a million times, but this is fresh revelation that God gave me. So if you don't know the story of Jonah, go read it. It's literally only like 1 to 2 pages long. But long story short, to summarize it, if you guys don't know the story of Jonah, Jonah was running from God in rebellion because he didn't want to do what God told him to do. God told Jonah to go to the city of Nineveh and preach his word. And Jonah was running in rebellion because he probably was scared and intimidated. So while Jonah was running from God and going in the opposite direction of where God told him to go, God intervened and sent a whale to swallow him up to prevent Jonah's disobedience, but also to save him. And some might think, well, don't you think that's a little harsh of God to allow Jonah to get swallowed up by a whale? Why did it have to be that extreme? That's what I used to think when I first read that story years ago. But as I studied God's character and as I studied the story, God opened my eyes and changed my perspective. God saved Jonah by sending that fish to swallow him. So let's go read what it says in Jonah chapter 1, verse 17. This is the King James Version. Now the Lord had prepared a great fish to swallow Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. Another version says the Lord appointed a great fish. The word appointed is from the Hebrew verb manna, which can be translated as to commission or to assign. God assigned that great fish to swallow Jonah. Jonah was running in rebellion, but because God is so merciful, He didn't allow him to. You might be thinking, how in the world is that God being merciful to get swallowed by a whale for a whole 3 days? Listen, if God didn't send that whale, Jonah would have died and drowned in that ocean. And that's why the scripture says God prepared the whale. The whale was God's provision. Yeah, but couldn't God just send a boat to save him or even prepare a life jacket? But to prepare a whale? If God saved Jonah right away and sent a life jacket from heaven, Jonah wouldn't have even cried out to God and repented and turned back to God. Jonah would have continued on in his disobedience had God saved him immediately. Now, this is where God blew my mind in what He revealed to me about what happened to me 3 years ago. So if y'all know my story, or maybe this is the first time you're seeing one of my videos, I was in a very toxic and abusive relationship a few years ago that God supernaturally delivered me from, and months later, I was radically saved. And months later after that, God sent me into ministry to help heal the brokenhearted. So now I share on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube about what God did and how He transformed my heart in this toxic relationship, how He healed me, and how He set me free from this narcissistic relationship that I was in. He told me to write a book about this. I launched this book 2 years ago, and it has now saved thousands of women and even men's lives to leave toxic relationships. But backstory, my ex was a narcissist and very manipulative, and that relationship destroyed me, but God is a redeemer, and He redeemed my story, and He healed me. But the revelation that He gave me is on my birthday 3 years ago, my ex put me in jail. And when I say he put me in jail, I'll get there. But narcissists don't like when the attention is not on them. And my ex was getting mad at me because it was my birthday. My friends were texting me. I was literally not paying attention to him for maybe 15 minutes while I was texting my friends back saying thank you for wishing me happy birthday. I had spent a whole day with my ex. And so this was like at nighttime now, and we were at a speakeasy, and it was just us two, and friends were still texting me happy birthday, and I was like texting them back saying thank you so much, blah blah. My ex was really mad that I wasn't paying attention to him. And backstory also, my ex was very abusive physically and verbally behind closed doors, but out in public, no one would have ever guessed. So this night on my birthday, I had already been so fed up because we were fighting that day, and because it was my birthday. Narcissists don't like birthdays or holidays. They ruin all kinds of events like that. And so that night on my birthday, he was physically grabbing me and being so disrespectful at this speakeasy that we were at. And he literally stole my phone and my purse and got up and left me at that place for 30 minutes by myself. I had no idea where he went. I didn't have a phone, so I couldn't call him. I couldn't leave the bar because he didn't even pay the bill, and I was stuck there now because they weren't going to let me leave without paying the bill, and I didn't have my purse to pay the bill. So I was literally stuck there, not knowing if he was ever going to come back. Sometimes he would disappear for days, hours, and I never knew when he was going to come back or respond to me. And so what I know now about him, he probably went and bought cocaine, because when he came back, his mood completely changed. He was very aggressive, very violent, yanking me. He was literally like out of his mind. And when he came back, I was like, my birthday's ruined. I was like, I'm not even going to try to have fun. I don't even want to drink anymore. And now I also I wasn't saved. I was living in disobedience. I was living in sin. But I knew that this night, his goal was to ruin my birthday, and I was scared to go back with him, and so that's why I didn't want to leave with him. So when he kept trying to yank me and grab me to leave with him, I was refusing to go. And so when he finally came back, I grabbed my stuff from him. He tried to yank me once again to get up and leave with him, and I slapped him at the bar. He then used that against me, called the cops, and I was immediately put into jail. I didn't give a statement. I didn't even give my side of the story. I just got thrown in jail like nothing. And I was like so confused. I was like, how does this even happen? Like, I wasn't allowed to tell my side of the story. I wasn't allowed to give my statement. Like, they just believed what he said and put me in jail without even giving context, like nothing. And I was sat in that jail cell on my birthday for 12 to 14 hours in pitch dark. It was COVID during the time, so they put everyone like in like consecrated places by themselves to not spread any sickness. So I was by myself in pitch darkness on my birthday, and I was like, God, why am I in here? I was so confused. I was angry. I was sad. And I just didn't understand why God allowed me to go to jail when he knew the truth. Now, listen to what God revealed to me. God is so good, because this moment of me getting put in jail, this was the start of me leaving this relationship and God getting my attention. Had he not put me in jail, I would have gotten hurt by my ex or died, or something worse would have happened that night if I would have gone home with my ex in the state that he was in, because like I said, we lived together. God did not allow me to drown. He saved me by appointing me to go to jail because it was his protection. The whale carried Jonah to the city of Nineveh. Jonah might have been running, but God knows how to intervene in our circumstances to put us back on the path of obedience. God put me in that jail cell that night so I could hear him speak to me. In that cell, it forced me to cry out to God, just like Jonah was forced to cry out to God in that whale for 3 days. And I got to experience the comfort of God, and I saw the word "stay strong" on the top of that jail cell on the ceiling that night. And I read that for the next 14 hours until I got out of jail. And that's the only thing that kept me like encouraged. And I still talk about this in my book of how I felt like that was a mystery, that it was God that put those words there, because I stood up on my cot that night and I was like, how did someone reach that? Even if you were 7 foot tall, you could not write that. Someone literally had to get a ladder to write that on the top of the ceiling. So I was so confused, and I was like, I know that was God. When your calling is so important, God won't even let you mess it up. The assignment and call that God gave Jonah was so important that he didn't even allow him to mess it up. Think about the times in your life where you knew you were going down the wrong path, but God intervened, which seemed like a setback or an inconvenience in the moment. But when you look back, you could see it was the biggest blessing. It was God's love and protection to save you from a worse outcome. Going to jail was a result of me being disobedient and not leaving that relationship when God told me to. And it forced me to cry out to God in jail. Jonah didn't cry out to God until he was in the belly of the whale. It forced him to seek God in his disobedience. In my disobedience of being in that relationship, God prepared a whale for me so I could cry out to him. Going to jail that night was my whale that God prepared. What God revealed to me later about this is that it was by his design and protection that put me there. Just like he used the whale to protect Jonah, I thought it to be a setback and to be the biggest inconvenience that I went to jail on my birthday. But looking back, it was the biggest blessing that ultimately led me to break up with my ex months later, get radically saved, and have a story to tell for this moment to encourage others. When God gave me this revelation, tears are streaming down my face. And I truly got to know and understand what John 13:7 means. It says, Jesus replied, "You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand." If you are in a toxic, abusive, or narcissistic relationship, I recommend getting my book. Everything that God taught me and how he healed me is in this book. It has saved thousands of women and even men's lives to leaving toxic relationships. And I pray that my book speaks and ministers to you.